Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living in New York. This is our weekly self-healing class, our Louise Hay class. I want to welcome anybody who's new. I see there's a lot of people. I don't know if any of you are new, but if you are, we have a lesson. We have some time for sharing afterwards. We've been doing a three-part seminar of Louise Hay's one of her seminars, and I'm going to continue on tonight. Last week we left off realizing that we can't change people, okay? And we spoke a little bit about one of Raymond Charles Barker's most famous talks was how to change people, and everybody showed up that week only to have him tell them that it's not possible, we can't change people. So when we were talking last week, that's one of the places where we were winding down that we can't change people. Another way, Louise said, is another way of learning to love yourself is just to stop trying to change people. Because some of us are very codependent. We're in there trying to help to the point, we're trying to help people. And here's the lesson point is resist the temptation to tell people what to do. If you have to go there a little bit, you might ask someone if they want help with something, but resist the temptation to tell them what to do. You've heard Louise say, you've read her say, you've heard me quote it often, try to avoid using the word should and all of its synonyms. Leave people alone. And by that I mean all that energy that we spend trying to make other people different, to improve them, we're kind of like a species that are, what I learned in therapy years ago, we're other referred. A lot of us are caretakers, and of course that's born out of love for the most part, but the thing is, we use a lot of our energy trying to help people, fix people, and to an extreme that comes across as being, controlling, so it can be too much. Another great author, Terry Cole Whitaker, said, what you think of me is none of my business. When you get involved in new thought, what we start to learn is we are learning to take care of ourselves. We're learning to take care of our own thoughts, our own thinking. One of the 12-step programs was helpful to me years ago because they understood the difference. The AA program said, let the hand of AA be there when somebody reaches out for help. AA isn't to be there for people who need help, all kinds of people who need help, but it's there for people who want help. And so in a similar way, some people really have a need to go out and try to straighten people out, and they have a need to tell people what they should do. And Jimmy, I need some tissue. We want to resist the need to be telling people what to do, and putting our energy towards working on ourselves. So Louise went on to say in that seminar, if we use just half the energy we expend on trying to control people and get people to do what we want them to do, if we just used half of that energy, she said we could make our own selves different. We could make our own lives better. And she said when we start thinking differently and we start thinking more optimistically, then things start to change across the board. When we are different, when we're happy, when we're coming from a more connected place, our whole life starts to change for the better. We are human beings as well as spiritual beings, and each of us have come here, born here on this planet, have come here to experience life and to grow. And everyone is here learning their own lessons. So you wouldn't want to get in the way of someone learning their lessons, would you? You go in and save them so many times, and they got no interest in wanting to be saved. and in a way you might even be interfering with their growth. But the energy, the focus in metaphysics always is going to be about learning about consciousness, learning about yourself, learning your lessons, because we're all here to learn, we're all here to grow, we're all here to expand. And you can, and you're here to learn, you will learn. You've got this internal guidance system called spirit, and it's always there. And in my case, I'll say it's noisy, because when I'm messing up, boy, nobody has to tell me I'm messing up. When you're messing up, does anybody have to tell you? I mean, don't you feel it all over the place? So you don't need to have it really anybody telling you what you should do. I can attest to the fact that there is that which is within you that lets you know when you've missed the boat. There's a famous passage in one of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays where he talks about punishment. You don't need to be punished from the outside. When you've missed the mark, when you've sinned and all of that, you instantly know. So we have within us the things that we need within us to learn, really, if we were only willing to listen to what that internal feedback is. So Louise was going on with her lecture saying you can learn to love yourself. And you want to learn to love yourself enough so that you're not brought down by other people, places, and things. And I've known a lot of people in my life that I would describe as not very strong. And I've seen them defer to husbands, girlfriends, boyfriends, family. And it's just because they haven't yet developed a strong sense of self. So they cower down to others. So this is something we want to be mindful of. We can begin to learn to love ourselves so we are not brought down by people. People who are self-destructive. See, we have a construct in this teaching that's a little bit different. We don't label people as being bad. Bad people, we don't do that. Because we understand that all people are spiritual beings, right? So how do you explain bad behavior? Well, what you do, basically, if you understand that each and every one of us are evolving, and we're growing, and we're learning lessons. And, I know I've learned a lot. I've been around a long time too, though. And, you're not really capable of being where you were 10, 20 years ago. And so we encounter people who are doing things that, don't meet our approval and we think, is wrong. And a lot of people would objectively agree with you. But the way we look at it in metaphysics is this human being, whoever he or she is, this is where they are in their personal evolution, okay? The American Indians would say, don't judge another person unless you've walked in their moccasins. And Jesus, if I can quote him, would do the same thing. So we're not here to judge anybody. Certainly we can observe behavior that's not wonderful in other people. And we don't need to hang out with these people either. But the thing is, the last thing they need is our judgment. Where we want to put our energy always is bring it back to ourselves. I will tell you, I spent 2 years in therapy learning about this whole thing about being other referred. I don't get my good from others. I don't need my approval from others. I don't need other people to tell me I'm okay. I remember watching Sally Fields years ago, being astonished that people awarded her, you like me, you really like me. Well, that's kind of a pathetic place to be, actually. You want to get to a point where you have self-acceptance and self-approval. And that would be an affirmation that Louise Hay would say, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. And I look at these other people who you might think are acting poorly, and you understand. You have some compassion. You say, oh my God, okay, this person is where they are. It's a spiritual being doing the best they can with what they got. And I'll have compassion because I can remember times in my life where I've maybe behaved something less than wonderful. So it's really we want to release the need to be in judgment because that puts us in separation. Then you have a them and us, and there really isn't any them and us. There is really one life, and that's God's life. You can call it anything you want to call it. There's one energy, and that energy is in everything that moves without exception. So as we are learning to be metaphysicians, we don't create bad people in our minds. We understand that people are in different places. They may be in a place where their behavior is destructive or very negative. And you might not personally be able to take that on, nor should you have to. So I guess I got ahead of my notes. I remember a therapist years ago asking a question every week. It was the same therapist. And she would ask the question, whose problem is it? That was the card she would give me each week I saw her, and I wrote her a check. And the card said, whose problem is it? So she had me thinking all through the week. When I was disturbed about anything, any fact of my life or the way things were going, whose problem was it? Obviously, it was mine, because we live in a world where it's a spiritual, it's a spiritual universe, and we live, we move, we have our being in it. And we have the ability to create calm and peace and joy no matter what's going on in the world around us. But if I'm giving my power away all the time, which I used to be bothered by everything everybody was doing. I remember a time in early recovery, I think I shared this before, I was able to sit in a room of 30 people and I knew what was wrong with everybody. I really did, because I was bright. I could figure it out. But the thing is, there's another expression which I learned soon after. If you spot it, you got it. So that means all this stuff I was seeing in other people that was so god-awful was stuff that was within me that wasn't yet dealt with. But I was bothered by it. Funny little thing that happened about that a few years later is I could go in that same room and I wasn't bothered at all by what anybody was doing. See, that's when it starts to happen is when you really begin to have some self-acceptance. It's very freeing. When you can love yourself the way you are, you can extend that to other people. And you'll have that concept, it'll be part of your being. You'll know, okay, this person's acting, in some crazy way. But they're doing the best they can with what they got. And then comes the next thing, what does it have to do with me anyway? It has absolutely nothing to do with me, unless I'm bothered by it. Because if I'm always bothered by what's on that television or what people are doing, if I'm bothered by everything, who's got the problem? So I pass on to you some very expensive, bought and paid for lessons. Whose problem is it when you're disturbed? And I could see peace instead of this. I could see goodness instead of this. I could see this as a place where this person, whoever he or she is doing the best they can. And I could celebrate it. I could even celebrate the advancements. We had a character around here a few years ago who was sometimes a lunatic. And I spent a lot of time with you. Some of you know him, and there was progress. And I could have continued to maintain the person was a lunatic. But, we spent time with an individual who got a lot better. And, nobody wants to judge anybody. People are where they are. Religious scientists, by the way, are lifters. We're here to say good wherever we can, with anything we can, any advancement. I was told years ago, you are the cheerleaders. Any damn fool can go out there and complain about everything. They complain about the medicine. They complain about the drugstore. They complain about this. They complain about, Think about that when you do that. It's just like if you're using that word should all the time. Who the hell wants to hang out with a person who's doing all that? Do you think it's attractive? So, if you want to become attractive, you don't have to be 18 and beautiful. You become attractive because of what lives inside of you. You know, it's very attractive to be around a person. It's attracting. When you have a person who's filled with joy and positivity, they're always going to be invited everywhere. I so well remember a friend of mine, Stanley, years ago. He was 79, and all of us were going to these young parties, and Stanley was always there. He was there because he was the most joy-filled person I had ever known. He would be invited everywhere. So it's something to pay attention to. So that question, whose problem is it? If you're disturbed over any fact of your life and you have an inclination to want to blame other people about anything, just take that finger back and put it down by your side and say, I release the need to blame. I know this person is doing the best they can now. Mind you, I don't have to hang out with them, but I don't have to make my life about them or anybody else. People are free, Louise said, and they have the right to think what they want to think, and they have a right to do whatever they want to do. And please, as best you can, leave them alone. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you are running anyone's life. So that came from Louise and Raymond Charles Barker both. And if you're in a position where you're living with, and sometimes these situations are tough, if you're in a position where you're living with a really negative person that doesn't want to change, then you need to love yourself enough to create some type of boundaries, some kind of distance. And if it's dangerous, you need to get out. If it's, just family stuff, somehow you've got to find ways to advocate for yourself, create some boundaries. Louise went on to say, oftentimes we stay in relationships too long, negative ones. I mean, it used to be, people stay married for the kids or something. You'd heard all the old things. And sometimes, people would stay in relationships that were really hazardous to their health and their children and everything else. You might even be in a relationship now that seems pretty bad. When you're there, it's tough because there's consequences for everything. You've got relationships, there's children, there's friendships, there's money, there's all kinds of things. So when we're there, and not having the courage to make a move or make boundaries, in a way we're adding to it because we're allowing it to happen. And it might have happened over time. And when someone's there, it's tough. And I'm sure all of you have either known somebody or had family members that you've been concerned about, or you might have been in these situations. For the person who's going through it over time, internally they have a sense that they're not worth, their sense of worth is diminished because they've stayed there for a long time. And internally they say, I stay here and I accept this behavior, and I don't believe I can change it. So, or there's another belief that underlies that for some people is, and nobody else would want me, so on and so forth. That's a very negative feeling to have, or a bunch of thoughts to have about yourself. People have a lot of negative concepts that they come into this class with, and oftentimes you don't talk about it because these are just things that live within you. But this is what this class is committed to, is helping people let go of that stuff. We have these concepts and beliefs that live inside of us, and they're not true. I mean, here's the thing: you may feel powerless in those kind of relationships, but in fact, you are powerful. You've lost track of your power. You've let other people tell you that you're something less than wonderful. So classes like this are really important because we build you up and we tell you that you are an individualization of God life. We tell you that you're here to express life beautifully, wonderfully, magnificently, and all of the universe supports you stepping out of any of these negative situations. And you will find the way if you believe that it's possible. When you start believing you're worth something and you start canceling out the negative beliefs you have about yourself, you'll find that you're being treated differently. Now, I'm not here to tell you how it will happen, but it'll start first about you thinking that you have value and worth. And thinking and affirming, I love myself, I accept myself, and I approve of myself, and I deserve to be treated well. If you have that circulating around your consciousness, the way will be revealed, the opportunities will reveal themselves, and you will take advantage of those opportunities if you believe that you deserve them. I know Louise said that this sounds very simplistic, and I repeat the same thing over and over, but I truly do believe it, that the quickest way to change any problem in our life is to love who we are. Because it's amazing how this type of vibration, that, you know, if you say, I love myself and I accept myself and I approve of myself, this type of vibration we send out. And as we do, we are different. If you really say, hey, I have value, I have worth, and you believe it, you know, you can feel it, it sends out a vibration. People pick up on it too. And people react to us differently. If your shoulders are slumped and you're really low on yourself and you're really, you know, it's just like you become a doormat. And people pick up on that also. We can't be healed, she said, and made whole unless we really begin to start loving ourselves more. And that's for our body, that's for our business, that's for our relationships. Somehow you've got to muster that energy and love yourself more. Again, we can't be healed and whole unless we really love who we are. So ask yourself, are you willing to do that? Now we're heading into a new year, so this is the time to really start to thinking about these things. Are you willing to love yourself more today? And then as you contemplate this next week, as you go into New Year's where people have a tendency to make some new affirmations, you ask yourself, am I willing to love myself more and do what it takes? Am I willing to do what it takes? When we really love ourselves, we cannot hurt ourselves and we can't hurt another person. And that to me is the answer to inner peace. And she said ultimately to world peace, if you just start taking care of you. And naturally extend love to other people, but don't try to control them or tell them what to do. Unconditional love is the goal that I think we're all after. That means unconditional love for ourselves, unconditional love for our friends. Don't make your friendships conditional. Don't tell people what to do. Just appreciate and love them the way they are. Another great book, its title is very simple. Love holds no grievances. So simply love. Release the grievances. Well, what are grievances? Well, you're mad at somebody still over something, anything, some imagined or real wrong. And and it's preventing you from picking up the phone. You've stopped talking. You've broken contact. Well, here's that powerful name of that book. Love holds no grievances. So in your heart of hearts, find the place to release whatever the hell that is holding, because whose problem is it? Nobody, these other people, they're not hurt by your grievances. Whose body's being impacted by your grievances? Whose health is being impacted by your grievances and resentments? Yours. So do a mind scan. And by a mind scan, it's like an inventory. Just review in your mind, who is it that I don't really want to talk to? Who is it that has annoyed me? Who is it that I think I'm mad at? that I don't think I ever want to forgive and all that. Just take a look at some of that stuff. Who do I need to forgive? Last week we spoke about making a list. Now, nobody told you really to do anything with the list, but it's just to pull you out of denial. You think you're okay with people, but if you really closer examination, you put their name on the list if it's bothering you still, because we have a tendency to tuck it down, put it away, minimize it. So what we're talking about here is being honest with ourselves. That goes back to Socrates. Sometimes you hear me quote him on the temple wall in Delphi. Know thyself. Know what's buried underneath, or be aware of what your resentments are, so you can release them. Know yourself. To thine own self be true. It all begins, Louise Hay said, with self-acceptance and self-approval. The affirmation for this is, again, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. And if you can, as we spoke of last week, look at yourself in the mirror once or twice a day. Some of you haven't dared look at yourself for months. You don't like what you see, and that's okay. You look at yourself, you don't like what you see, that shows you right there some things that you need to start working on. I'm not going to criticize myself because I'm not such and such anymore. I'm going to look at my eyes, I'm going to say, I love you, and I'm going to connect with that spark that's within. I want to ignite that spark again. You came into this life for a purpose, this planet. It wasn't a random thing. It wasn't a mistake. Your life is not a mistake. You might say, but I've made a lot of mistakes. And that may be true, but your life is not a mistake. You came in here as a spiritual being to learn lessons and to fulfill yourself. And you've come here to learn how to express love on the deepest level that you personally are capable of doing, and then sharing that. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale, but that's your unique thing. You've come here to learn and to grow and to expand, and you've had obstacles that you've had to overcome, and you've done well, and there's more to do. So you want to honor yourself, especially at this time of year, and really any time of year, and love yourself, accept yourself, and say, hey, you're doing a great job. And look into that mirror again, because it's a powerful place to look in your own eyes and say that to yourself. Because you really don't need all that from another person. It's far more powerful if you can give that to yourself, actually. And when you're getting ready to leave the planet, which we all do one day, the only thing we're ever going to take with us is our capacity to love. You don't take your relationship with you, and you don't take any of your things with you when you leave. You don't take your car or your bank account or your job. You take your capacity to love and that beautiful energy that you have created that is now you. And as we grow older, it becomes more exquisite and more wise. And you leave with all of that. You don't want to leave with a bunch of resentments, I promise you. So the question comes up for this closing part of this seminar is, how can you love yourself more, do you imagine? And how can you give more love to the planet, to your community, to the people you interact with, your family, to the world itself? It doesn't have to be any big thing, but anything is a big thing if it's done with the right heart and the right intention. How can you give more love over the next period of time, say in the weeks to come? Louise commented, she said, using the principles and ideas that I've learned through the teaching and in my own lifetime, I've created for myself a set of beliefs. And she says, these are what I call my basic beliefs. And my beliefs, they work very well for me. They're so simple, and yet they seem to include all areas of my life. And she said, I want to share them with you in case you want to embrace some of them yourself. First of all, I believe that I'm always safe. Doesn't matter where I go, what I do, I believe I'm always safe. Second of all, well, this is the same one. Wherever I go, wherever I am, no matter who I'm with, I am always safe. This is one of my beliefs. And I go on further and I say, the universe takes care of me. I don't worry. I know that I'm led and I'm guided at every moment. And furthermore, regarding worry, I don't worry. I also know that everything I need to know is revealed to me when I need to know it. The next thing is I don't have to struggle. She said, knowledge comes to me at the perfect time. Whatever I need to know, whatever I need to hear, comes to me when I need to know it and when I need to hear it. If I'm supposed to know something, I trust that it will be revealed to me when I need to know it. Now, the next is going to be a little bit astonishing. She said, I don't have any need to read newspapers. Furthermore, I don't have to listen to the nightly news or to the radio. I don't have to fill myself or focus on any of that. She used the word garbage. She says, there is very little there that is good. If I'm meant to know something, it will come to me. I always know. See, she's speaking of the fact that we're all a part of everything. And something's known anywhere, it's known everywhere. She went on to say, I can choose to commune with all that is life-giving. I can choose to commune with people who are wonderful, and I can listen to things and read things that bring me joy. I don't worry. I simply know that everything I need comes to me in the perfect time, space, sequence. And once again, I release the struggle of trying to make things happen. She said, I simply speak my word for what I believe. I trust it's happening, and I let it go. She said, think of it this way. I place my order in what I like to think of as the cosmic kitchen, and the big chefs are working on it. Well, it's true. When you do your affirmative prayers, when you do your affirmations, and do them often, right? And she said, when you do them and you try to struggle to make things happen, she says it's not going to work out. But if you go to that restaurant, I guess that cosmic restaurant, if you go to the restaurant and the waiter or waitress takes your order and goes off to the kitchen, you don't run after them into the kitchen to see what's happening and how they're preparing your food and you're getting into their business or how they're doing it. You're just enjoying your evening, you're assuming that it's being taken care of, and you can do the same thing in every other area of your life. So you do an affirmation for something like peace, and you know there's a healing, and you know that also that there's a healing pattern of health and vitality that's operating in you. And then you can say, okay, with confidence, that's done, that's taken care of. It's like you're doing a release and a treatment. Every time you think of it, whatever's going on, you just tell yourself it's taken care of. She went on to say, so I deal with what's in front of me each day and sometimes each hour. And I know what is right for me will definitely come to me in the perfect time sequence. Then she exclaimed, "So much good comes to me in my life. Some of it I asked for, and much of it I haven't even contemplated." And she said, "This is a direct result of my maintaining positive expectancy." When you love yourself, it's really amazing at what comes into your life. Here's the key. I also believe that life is a joy, and it's filled with love. She said, that's been one of my main things for so long. I believe that life is a joy, and it's filled with love. And as I choose to believe this, it becomes true for me. Now, I've been doing this a long time. It might take you a while to believe this, that life is a joy and filled with love. But as you do this, you're going to find that life is filled with joy and filled with love and opportunities of every kind. But when you get to that place where it's your default position, I believe life is filled with joy and love, she says, then it's going to be filled with joy and love. She said, I now awaken in the morning with a smile and joy in my heart, and I feel it, and I find it almost as soon as I wake up everywhere I turn. It took some time and some practice, but now I find it all the time. We have a body that's filled with loving energy. It's so incredibly powerful. It's able to heal. Our heart's job is to lovingly pump joy throughout our bodies. And all we have to do is keep releasing negative thoughts wherever they come in, gently release them. Old concepts, out, next, out, release them, and open ourselves up for more and more joy to happen. I am supplied and supported. What we give out comes back to us. So what you're believing is going to come back to you. You know, it's going to, as a demonstration or a manifestation. So just pay attention. There's a reason here in New York every Thursday we ask, what's the conversation been like being you this week? It's because that conversation is so creative. So we want to be able to wake up in the morning, as Louise did, you know, knowing that life is filled with joy and love. So if we have a conversation that's different than that, then we want to work on the conversation, especially as we're heading into the new year. So you see how this works. Louise would always say it's all very simple. It is. It's a simple concept. The challenge is, you know, putting it into operation. She went on to say, I believe I am loving and I am loved and I am supplied and I am supported. And I operate from this loving space of the heart as much as I can. Now, this is a lesson for all of us. And as you know, we're not all there yet, all the time at least. We get off track, we lose our way, we react, sometimes more than we want to, and sometimes we're miserable. And Louise stated, every time I find myself off track, I simply try to bring myself back. Again, we'll take that pause, and get reconnected. Because by giving out love, of course, it comes back to us. It comes back to us multiplied many times over. And there's so much love in my life these days, and peace and abundance. She said it's simply incredible. She said it didn't happen overnight, but there was a quickening. She said, I could never have imagined it. Never. She said, okay, now I also know that I prosper wherever I turn. You see, I never chased money, she said, or ran after money. I always asked myself in anything I was doing is, how can I help? How can I be of best service wherever I was and whatever I was doing? Because I knew money would always follow. And regarding money and prosperity, she said the quickest way to increase our income is with our mental work, the work that we do in consciousness. The beliefs that we choose to accept either attract money or they repel it. If you have a belief in scarcity, for example, that there's not enough, then you can imagine what you will continue to demonstrate. She stated, "My income is constantly increasing." That's an affirmation she said that she has used in the past, and she thinks it would be helpful for everybody. My income is constantly increasing. I've chosen to accept this and believe it. She said, you might like to accept that one as well for yourself. My income is constantly increasing because that means wherever you start, it can always grow. So I prosper wherever I turn, and my income is constantly increasing. I also know and believe that I'm willing to grow personally and change. And this was important because she was very successful at this time in her life. And she said, see, I don't believe that I know everything, not by a long shot. She said, I don't think I'm on any type of plateau. She said, I know there's so much more for me to learn. I think she was probably in her 80s at that point. I know that there's so much more for me to learn, and I want always to be open-minded and open to learn. The science of mind always maintained that there is much more to know and learn. And she said, I am open, I'm well aware of that. And I'm open and receptive to new ideas and new knowledge and new insight. And I allow them to come in. And when I find something new, I'm willing to shift what's inside of me and let the old belief go. I do that periodically. She was winding it down by saying, we're all so different than we were 10 years ago, certain 20 years ago. We're even different than we were 5 years ago. Think about how you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. She went on to say, I'm willing to look at myself. We can begin now, each of us, or we can begin again. The final chapter has not been written, saying, I know that each of us, I know I can become more of who I am. I don't believe that we become better people because that implies that you're not good enough. But I think we can become more of who we are. We are spiritual beings, we are growing, we're changing, so change is wonderful. It's what we are here to do. I'm willing to let go of whatever doesn't work for me anymore. And I know that growing and changing are just aspects of life. Life is always unfolding through us and for us. The other thing I know for myself is that all is well in my world. See, if I know that all is well in my world, and if you know that, it doesn't matter which direction you're turning, because it will always be a good direction. So trust love. So I trust life. I trust life to take me where I'm supposed to go, and that everything will always be for my highest good. And she said, these beliefs have worked well for me. Now the question for all of you, what kind of beliefs would you like to try and embrace? Her suggestion that day was to create a set of beliefs that you would like to live by, and then start affirming them and know that they're true for you. They'll help carry you through where you want to go. This is all part of loving yourself. Create a set of guidelines that work for you. So if you want to love yourself, you want to love other people, you will want to release the negative patterns and things that are holding you back. Practice unconditional love as much as you possibly can, because it'll change your whole life enormously. If there are people you know you need to forgive, make the list. Let the universe help you figure out how and when to do it. But think about it and take a few moments to jot them down somewhere. Is there anyone you left out? You can set that list aside somewhere and you can add to it or remind yourself. We no longer want to live our life as critics or fault finders. So do that little inventory list of people you need to forgive or work on forgiving. Do everything you can to be happy and to bring joy to your life. We are each responsible to make this happen. We are about to embark on a new year. What are you willing to do so you can experience yourself in a fuller, happier way? If we are in fact responsible for what happens to us, then the good question for the new year is, what are we willing to become responsible for? And what part of our life? What one thing or a couple of things could you do to bring about a positive change? Maybe in your body, in your outlook, in your circumstances, in expressing more joy. What thing or couple things could you do that would make a difference?